welcome to our service this morning. And if you're a visitor here today, you're especially welcome. And I wonder just if anybody who is a visitor might mind putting their hands up so we can give you a wee welcome clap. Any visitors here today? Visitors? Thank you. My name is Robin Brody, and I'm one of the 15 elders in our church, and also the coordinator of our discipleship team. And one of the areas I oversee is home groups. And last time I checked, we had about 100 people from the church involved in various weekly and fortnightly groups, meeting on various mornings and evenings during the week. If you are new to the church or not already part of one of these groups, let me encourage you to join one. This is a great way to get to know others better, an opportunity to grow in your faith, and also lots of fun. Specifically, I'm delighted to let you know of a new group starting this Wednesday evening and running for 6 weeks initially. Mike Scott and I, with our lovely wives Margaret and Bryony, are going to be showing a fascinating series of films, and they're now even actually on Netflix, called The Chosen. Each episode in this first series is a drama telling the story of Jesus' time, culture, and message in an original way through the eyes of his various disciples and others who came across him. So The Chosen is a creative and thought-provoking production which we think should provide a good base for discussion afterwards. No prior Bible knowledge is needed, just a desire to watch something interesting and chat about it in a friendly atmosphere. The evenings, starting this Wednesday, will take place at Mike and Margaret Scott's house, Cairn on our BD Terrace, just up from the High Street, from 7:30 to 9:30. We'll have tea and chat, then watch the film, and leave time for open discussion about it afterwards. Now, while all would be welcome, we would particularly like those who are not part of other groups to join us initially. If you're interested in joining us for any or all of the episodes, please see me or Mike or Margaret or Bryony. And we look forward to seeing a good number of you, I hope. Thank you. And now I will ask our worship team to come up and lead us.
In my class, in my faith, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are peace in my troubles. You are peace in my troubles. In the silence you won't let go. In my questions you will. Your great love will lead me through. You are peace in my troubles. You are peace in my troubles. My lighthouse, shining light. I will follow you, oh my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore. shall I believe? I forgot where I was going. I'm going to start again because I just got lost. I got that there. I'll start again. You hear me when I call. You are my morning song. No darkness fills the night. It cannot hide the light. Who shall I be? You crush the enemy underneath my feet. You are my sword and shield. No troubles make us still. Who shall I be? I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. My strength is in your name, for you alone can save. You will deliver me. Yours is the victory. Who shall I be? Who shall I be? I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. Let nothing formed against me shall stand. You hold the whole world in your hands. I'm holding on to your promises. You are faithful. You are faithful. Let nothing formed against me shall stand. You hold the whole world in your hands. I'm holding on to your promises. You are faithful. You are faithful. You are faithful. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The God of angel armies is always by my side.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And now I'm going to ask Dawn to come up. She had to work very hard this morning. She's been playing in the music group, and now she's going to lead us in the children's slot. Thank you.
1,6,042, 1,6,043, 1,006,000. Oh, hello. I'm counting my money. I have lots of money. I love my money. Very rich. Oh, I've lost count. Oh well, never mind. I love counting my money. I can start again. 1, 2, 3. Actually, that's a bit boring for you. I'll tell you about my house. I have an enormous house with lots and lots of rooms in it. It's fabulous. Every room has fantastic furniture, beautiful artworks on the walls, and fresh flowers in every room, and they're changed every day. Not by me, no, I have servants to do that. And when I eat, actually, what are your plates made of? Emily, what are your plates made of? Yes? Made of pottery. Mine are not made of pottery. Can you guess what my plates are made of? Yes? Gold. Yes, I have solid gold plates. Because I'm so rich. And I have lots of animals. Horses, donkeys, sheep, goats, chickens. Lots of fields for them to live in. And lots of other fields that grow crops. And made huge barns to store the crops in. Lots of people working for me. Oh, I'm very, very rich. I love being rich. And I have fantastic clothes. Oh, I dyed my hair this cool grey colour. Do you like it? I thought it would make me look wise. I'm actually quite young. I'm only 21. And my job, I'm a ruler, and I love being a ruler. I love telling people what to do and making the rules. I have a fantastic life. I wanted to go on forever. And I was thinking recently, I want to go to heaven when I die. Now, I've memorised the first 5 books of the Old Testament, as all good Jewish people do. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the Torah, and the 10 Commandments in Exodus chapter 20. Well, I've obeyed all those since I was about your size, so I think I'm doing well. But somebody I've heard about, I'm going to talk to him. He walks on water and cures the sick people, and he fed loads of people with hardly any food. And when his friend died, he raised him from the dead. His name's Jesus. Now, some people say he's the Messiah, and some people say he's God's son, so I think he's a good person to talk to about this. Here's Jesus. Hello, Jesus. Hello, Gad. Come to ask you something. Yes, ask away. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Well, you read the Bible, haven't you? Oh yes, I've memorised the Torah. Good. And the 10 Commandments? Yes, I've kept those since I was so high. Right, there's only one more thing we need to do. What's that then? Well, I'm not sure you're going to like it. Oh, tell me, I'll do it. Right, go, sell everything you have, and give the money to the poor. Oh, but I'm rich, and I love my money. Go, sell everything I have, yes. Well, I'll sell everything, but I'll just keep the house, so I've got a roof over my head. The house as well? Yes. Well, I could just keep the donkey, so I've got some transport. No. Or maybe could we not just keep one gold plate? No, everything. Everything. Jesus, that's not fair. Everything. Is it fair that you have such a lot and there are are poor people who don't even have enough food to eat. Yes, I get your point. I'm going to have to think about this. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, Jesus. I'm going to go for a walk and think about this. Well, children, what do you think? Do you think he's going to do what I said? Who thinks he will? Put the hand up. Who thinks he will sell everything? Who thinks he won't? I see. Right, I'm going to go now, and then you can talk to him and see what he did say. Jesus said to me, sell everything I had, give the money to the poor. Now what would you do if he said that to you? You had to sell everything, what would you do? You'd give it all away. You would. And about grown-ups, if Jesus said to you, go sell everything you have and give to the poor. I wonder what you've done, what I do. Thank you. And go to your classes.
Somebody sent me a prayer recently that Billy Graham used to pray at the start of each year, and I thought it would be a good one for us to pray this morning. So let's pray. My Father and my God, as I stand on the threshold of this new year, I acknowledge my need for your guiding presence. Although I have my hopes and expectations for the year ahead, you alone know what it holds for me, and only you can give me the strength and the wisdom I'll need to meet its challenges. So help me humbly put my hands into your hands, trusting you and seeking your will for my life this coming year. In the face of life's uncertainties, assure me of the certainty of your unchanging love. When confronted with inevitable disappointments and heartaches, help me to turn to you for the stability and comfort I need. Amid life's temptations and the pull of my stubborn self-will, help me not to lose my way, but to have the courage to do what is right in your sight, regardless of the cost. And amid my daily preoccupations and pursuits, open my eyes to the sorrows and injustices of our hurting world, and help me to respond with compassion and sacrifice to those who are friendless and in need. May my constant prayer be, show me the way I should go, because I long for you. As I look back over the past year, I thank you for your goodness to me, far beyond what I deserved. May I never take your goodness for granted, or forget all your mercies to me, but may they lead me to a more profound commitment to make you the foundation and the center of my life. And so, my Father, I thank you for the hopeful promise of this new year, and I look forward to it with expectancy and faith. This I ask in the name of our Lord and Saviour, who by his death and resurrection has given me hope, both for this world and the world to come. Amen.
Oh
When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, let those in the city get out, and let those in the country not enter the city. For this is the time of punishment in fulfillment of all that has been written. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. There will be great distress in the land and wrath against this people. They will fall by the sword and will be taken as prisoners to all the nations. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. Men will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Amen.
Hi there. My name is Tony Stephen. I get to minister here at the West Church. It is a privilege. We've got an image that's been up outside the church for the last while, and it's been up here on the screens every now and again. Images have a great deal of power. Images can make us ask questions, direct us to think about a particular thing, but they allow a whole lot of interpretation as well. This particular image is about a young ancient Jewish teacher called Jesus of Nazareth. And in his time, around about 2,000 years ago, it was a very public 3 years that we know about his life and his death and then his resurrection. And in that, one of the most vivid scenes in all the accounts we know of him is a scene where he comes into the centre of his land, Israel, the capital city, Jerusalem, and right in the centre of their culture and their religion, known as the Temple in Jerusalem. And there he tips over the tables that are in the entrance courtyards of the table. He drives out all the people who are there selling sacrifice animals and also trading money so that people can use that to buy these animals for the temple. Effectively, he stops the whole business of the temple where people come and they try and connect with God for about a day. And the tables are thrown over, and this image is of that violent scene. So we might imagine an angry young man. And we've looked a wee bit at that particular story and asked more questions about whether it's more passion that's shown there than anger. However, we've got this image of the table tipped over, but yet this is not just an ordinary table. The artist who did this for me has shown green shoots of growth coming out of the legs of the table. So maybe it's not such a negative image. As I say, images and symbols help us to think in different ways, or actually provoke us in lots of ways. And despite the fact we have a collection of books that we call the Bible full of the right things, an awful lot of it is images and symbols. Next slide. We're talking about a man called Jesus of Nazareth, who operated at a particular time in history in the face of the mighty at that time Roman and Greek empire and culture that covered most of what was the known world. A man living in oppression, a man as part of the Jewish people, and a man from a particular place, so we'll call him Jesus of Nazareth. And the stories we're hearing at this point in an account of his life that we call Luke is at a point where he stirred things up in the north, but now he's right in the centre. And he's causing a real fuss, and it's bringing things to a conclusion. particularly in the capital city, which is full of people for a big festival, and particularly at the temple, this focus for their God and their faith. Next slide. We are subject in our culture, in our society, in our modern day, to all sorts of images. Probably most of us would argue that we're subjected to too many images. We have images on screens in the house, and screens in our pockets, screens in the car, shouting at us from bus shelters and posters. And these images come in all sorts of different ways, and they all demand our attention. And an awful lot of them are negative. An awful lot of them are powerful, and they move us to sympathise. They move us to be angry and want to change things, to try and find justice. They move us to give, as we've talked about a little bit, towards causes that try and act in those. But sometimes they just cause us to shut down, because we get so many different ones. And over Christmas time, we used this piece of art that was created to just remind us about that original situation that Jesus was born into, which isn't so different from the war-torn places that we can think of from the different news reports or natural disasters or issues and crisis that people are facing. Next slide. I used over that time some of these words and said if I talked about a country that is occupied, if I talked about an area that's devastated by generations of conflict, if I talked about a system of thinking that is controlled by few and yet is seductive and destructive and wants to create a bigger and bigger empire that then feeds some sort of system and machine, but actually wants its subjects just to be distracted and entertained, we can think of all sorts of different images and ideas and things that are affecting us right all over our global earth today. But yet that's exactly the kind of context that this ancient story is talking about. Now we could look at that very negatively and say, well, thousands of years later, nothing gets any better. And that can be upsetting. Next slide. Jesus is standing at the temple, and he is now getting really worked up. And what we're trying to work out as we listen is whether he's worked up because he is angry, or whether he's worked up because he is full of passion and emotion and concern. And we'll think a little bit about that. He is being very vocal. He's using all sorts of ideas. And here he says something that is kind of a prediction. He's been talking about what's going to happen in the next few years in their context. What they have been doing as a people is always rebelling against any other nation. And quite rightly, they feel they're oppressed, they feel they're not in control of their own land, they're not being the people they should be, and time after time, generation after generation, I think the way to do that is to be even more violent against this machine, to overthrow that, and to then take over and have their own empire. And Jesus seems to be suggesting that is dangerous, that the Roman machine deals with that in a very particular way, and he's predicting what is going to happen. And he's not unique in this. Anyone in their situation can see what is likely to happen. And he says, you will see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, you'll know that its desolation is near, then you should flee to the mountains, get out. Now he's actually describing something that does happen. So his life and death and resurrection probably happened around about 30, AD 30-ish. But 40 years after that, in AD 70, a group of Jewish people started a rebellion against the Romans, an armed rebellion. And Titus, who was the emperor at the time, marched his enemies down, surrounded the city, and they destroyed the city and the temple, flattened it to the ground. And that's a key part of the Jewish story now, when the Roman Empire came and just absolutely destroyed everything. Now Luke, who's writing this down, is probably, we don't know for sure, probably collecting this material together after this has happened. So he can see that Jesus' words were not just a prediction because he had some inspiration, but anyone could have seen this is what's likely to happen if you push against the Romans. But Luke can also see that this is exactly what did happen. And in that time, next slide, and there's a lot of honesty in there, it is terrible, and we know this because of the situations across the world that we are faced with images of. It is terrible for the most vulnerable. And they're identified in Jewish society as those who are pregnant, those who are nursing. And it's people like this that suffer in these situations much more than those who are in power or in positions where they can be protected. And Jesus here talks about the reality of people being taken prisoners, people being taken to other places, being trampled on by, and he uses the word Gentiles. Gentiles aren't a race or a particular people. Gentiles are just simply non-Jews. The Jewish story was that they were chosen to be a blessing to the whole world, and to have their land and to work with their God. And yet here is a time when it seems like non-Jewish people are taking control. And that's what Jesus is talking about here. Next slide. He even uses very hard language, because he talks about this as a time of punishment and fulfillment of all that's been written. Now, when he talks about fulfillment of all that's been written, he's talking about their stories and their prophecies that warn what happens if their people don't follow the way of God. And often we read that and we think, well, this means there's an angry God who wants people to behave and then he punishes them. But the story we find instead is a heartbroken God who consistently gives himself to his people, explains how he had made them to be, explains what he is doing and how he wants them to be part of that, and they keep rejecting that and being unfaithful and choosing other destructive ways, and he then allows that to happen. And sometimes that language is the language of punishment, but not punishment, next slide, in the sense of anger and revenge. Punishment in the sense of a heartbroken father allowing his wayward children to suffer the consequences of their own choices with tears in his eyes. And that's the image that we get more and more about how Jesus talks about Jerusalem, that his anger and his frustration is not about revenge. It's about being heartbroken over what could be and what could be. And that's why one of his messages is a warning. This is going to happen soon, and those of you who can avoid it need to run and not be part of it. Next slide. Then he does talk in language that does to us, particularly non-Jewish and not looking in that ancient society, very strange. He talks about the signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. He talks about the clouds. He talks about the heavenly bodies, about overwhelming seas. Now, there is definitely a kind of Jewish language known as apocalyptic, and it uses kind of language like this. It may be that Jesus is referring to a little bit about that. Apocalyptic language is kind of visionary language about a time in the future, or even now, where God is doing things or will do things, and this is kind of not quite a prediction of how it's going to happen, but using all sorts of art and imagery to talk about how God is going to be sorting things out and representing different things in different ways. Lots of people look at any religion and think, well, religion is often about predicting what's going to happen at the end of the world. And there's going to be some code in here, and if we can decode the code, then we can work out and predict what is going to happen in the future. It's less clear that this is what is going on here. It may have that level to it, but Jesus at the same time is actually talking about something that's going to happen, as far as he's concerned, in the next few years. But he talks about it in this kind of language. What I might not appreciate at this point is that all through the Jewish story, in their relationships with other nations, their relationship with their God, and as their artists try and inspire them or even communicate messages they believe their God has for them, they use imagery like this. The nations around them were often known as the nation of the sun. They might have worshipped the sun. The nation of the moon, they might have a cult about the moon. Sometimes different nations are talked about as different kinds of metals or substances. So there's imagery in some of these kinds of writings where they talk about idols, big statues that are made of all sorts of gold at the top and iron at the bottom. And all of these would have represented actually the different nations. Sometimes they're represented as beasts or different kind of animals. And people of the time would have recognized them. We do the same today. We sometimes have ways that we characterize other nations or groups or people into some kind of monsters or images, and we use them in cartoons and all sorts of different things. And the Second World War, First World War had these kinds of ideas and images. I think Jesus is probably picking out one or two of these kind of things that people would have recognized at the time. But even if he's not, at the same time, he's using a kind of imagery that we do actually recognize. Next slide. Because these signs and symbols and images are sometimes the kind of things that we say about the kind of conflicts or disasters or changes in the world. At the time Jesus is talking about, just after what he's saying right here, just before that destruction of the temple and the city, the Emperor Nero committed suicide, which was groundbreaking for the whole of the empire. In quick succession after that, you had 4 different emperors come and go, and in different places all sorts of different things were happening. And as we've seen in our own country as leaders change very, very quickly. There is a sense of instability. Next slide. There's a feeling of chaos. There's a feeling that what the events are doing are actually shaking the world. And that's what Jesus' image is, that this will be something that shakes everybody's foundations. Next slide. Then he talks about an image that they would have definitely found very powerful. He talks about the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And again, it's very easy to look at this in English, pick this bit out of one particular story without any context and think, well, this is some vision of a time in the future when Jesus is going to sail down in a cloud and all sorts of terrible things are going to happen and it's going to be the end of the world. And there may or may not be some layer to that. But at the same time, the Son of Man was a very clear image that his Jewish listeners would have known about. Next slide. In their books of hope, and one in particular called Daniel, in chapter 7, they came back time and time again to this image and idea that their God was a God who heard their cry and acted. And at the right time, he was going to act. He was going to send someone. He was going to come effectively himself. And he was known as a Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. And we might have all these images of sort of coming down in some sort of elevator or like some big stage show where you come down sitting on a cloud. In the Jewish story, clouds simply represented God's presence. We sang about it today. Fire leading me forward and a cloud. In their story in Exodus, their God appeared to them, was present with them in fire and in the cloud. A cloud is similarly just an image of the presence of God, and it comes together. So one like a Son of Man is an idea of someone that is going to actually be God himself in some ways, given that authority to come and to change things in a really groundbreaking way. And Jesus has referred to himself about this time and time again. Next slide. What Luke is doing, as far as I'm concerned, a Jewish artist collecting this material together, using it to encourage Jesus' followers and trying to cope with what is going on in their world. It's just a very thinly veiled way of saying, look, Jesus is this figure. That's what the Son of Man is. And that figure is not just Jesus, the Jewish rabbi, it's God himself getting involved as he has all through our history, but now in an even more close way, and that's why that's that image of clouds. This is God at work. Next slide. And in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the real suffering that is inevitable when folk choose to try and fight the empire with its own weapons instead of listening to what God's way is going to be chaos. It's going to be suffering. It's not what God wants. It is heartbrokenly what God allows for a time. And in that, there's an element of warning. And he says to them, this is going to happen. Those of you who can get out of here, get out of here. It's going to be terrible for all sorts of people. And that's a reality in all these sorts of situations. But more than that, next slide. It's a word of hope. It's a word of comfort, because he's reminding them that as terrible as this is, in this period, their God is a God who is at work in his life and death and resurrection. A God who's always been at work, who's always, regardless of how many times his people have turned against him, been faithful to them. A God who hears and a God who acts and who is with them, who doesn't abandon them to this terrible situation, but instead goes through it with them and has a plan for a time when, in this idea of the kingdom, everything will be put to rights, everything will be restored in a time of resurrection and the creation being the creation it was meant to be. Next slide. It's interesting to think, just in these few words, what is Jesus commanding these people to do? At one point he says, run if you can, run if you can. But what's his other command? His command is, next slide, to stand. Not to fight, not to win, but to stand. And it's not passive standing as in hide, keep yourself safe. It's a keep doing what you're doing. Keep resisting the empire. Keep resisting the impulses to give up, to give in to the chaos, to be numb in the face of everything that's happening. Instead, keep reminding yourself who your God is, what he made you to do and to be, and what you get to do in being part of that. And remember who your God is, remember what the long-term plan is, and remember that your God is with you. Next slide, and that's how he finishes that bit. Even so, when you see these things happening, you know that the kingdom of God is near. And that phrase is a double meaning. It's not just that there will be a time when everything goes the way God wants it to be, but also that idea of the kingdom of God is God's presence himself, that he is not just preparing to sort things out in the future, he is with us right now. Let's take a couple of minutes to think about all these images and symbols and warnings and maybe hopes and comforts and how we respond. And now may the blessing of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit go with you all, now and always. Grace and peace. Amen.